Marathon launched and instantly turned into a queue simulator, peaking at around 86,000 players on Steam, while a bunch of people got hit with black screens, server queues, disconnects, and WA error codes. Fun start, right? Sony paid roughly $3 or $4 billion for Bungie. And you don't drop that kind of money to land in the pretty respectable aisle. You pay that to own the room. The internet is doing what it always does, grabbing one number, turning it into a religion, and yelling at strangers about it. I'm flattered you think I'm an AI, but no algorithm is sophisticated enough to replicate my level of awkwardness. That number is 86K. That's not dead. That's not nothing. That's a real launch crowd. Here's the problem: in extraction shooters, real crowd is the entry ticket, not the trophy. Because this genre doesn't reward decent. It rewards dominance. It rewards being the default game your group plays when nobody can decide what to play. And the comparison everyone's throwing at your face is brutal. Competitors like Arc Raiders hit 260,000. That's not a little higher. That's a different sport. If Marathon is a solid opening night, Arc Raiders looks like a stadium tour. You can feel the momentum difference through the screen. And sure, someone will pop in with, but Marathon beat Tarkov Steam Peak. Cool. That's like bragging you won a fist fight while a guy nearby is bench pressing a car. What's the actual issue here? The middle of the pack dilemma. Sounds harmless. It's not. It's a slow death in a winner-takes-all market. Because extraction players don't casually rotate 5 games forever. These games demand maps learned, routes memorized, systems internalized, and trust issues built with your friends. Once people settle into a main game, good luck pulling them out with our gunplay is crisp. And Bungie can't afford to be a maybe later. Bungie needs to be a right now. That's the pressure when Sony writes a check that big. If this was some mid-sized studio, 86K would be champagne and confetti. With Bungie, 86K turns into an awkward meeting where everyone smiles while staring at charts. Now let's get into what players actually experienced, because numbers don't matter if people can't even play. Always online became always in line. People were stuck on black screens, staring at queues, getting booted mid-session. And those W8 error codes, that became the unofficial mascot of launch day. Nothing screams premium AAA like paying money and immediately getting a cryptic error code that looks like your Wi-Fi is being judged by a robot. Even better, that error code had more screen time than actual gameplay for some folks. And here's the extra spicy part: Bungie ran a server slam beta just days before launch. That's supposed to be the confidence move. The stress test, the we're ready moment. Then launch hits and the game struggles anyway, and the community immediately asks the only fair question: what did the server slam actually prove? This is where the detail that made everyone's eyebrows shoot off their face shows up. The launch build required a completely fresh download, separate from the beta. That's the kind of thing that makes players feel like the test was a dress rehearsal for a different play. Maybe there were good reasons. Doesn't matter. The optics are terrible. Test one thing, ship another, act shocked, the results don't carry over. That's not reassurance, that's performance art. And then the internet did what it does best: it turned failure into a slogan. Marathon broke didn't just appear, it spread, it trended, for roughly 12 hours straight on launch day. 12 hours is a full shift of people roasting your game like it's a seasonal event. That's not a minor hiccup. That's the narrative, setting like concrete. Now, launch problems happen. Nobody's pretending otherwise. But the industry has trained players into accepting nonsense. The "it's day one" excuse is basically Stockholm Syndrome with a pre-order bonus. Imagine any other product working like this. You buy a blender, and it says, "We're aware some users may experience blades not spinning at launch." You throw it out the window. In games, people say, "Well, it'll be fixed soon," while rebooting their router, like a medieval priest doing an exorcism. Now, right when the servers were wobbling and everyone was already irritable, the community got a second gift, a rumor with teeth. The ESRB listing that appeared to include PS4 and Xbox One as platforms. Outlets like TechRaptor and others reported the listing just hours before launch, and it became today's biggest community talking point. Because it feeds a fear that players already had, the held-back theory. The logic is simple and intoxicating. If the game was designed around 2013 hardware, then any safe decision suddenly has a villain. Maps feel conservative, blame last gen. Scale feels restrained, blame last gen. Systems feel cautious, blame last gen. It's the perfect explanation because it's easy. Too easy. And easy explanations spread faster than complicated realities. Could the listing be outdated or wrong? Sure, that's possible. But once the idea lands, it doesn't need perfect proof. It just needs enough plausibility to stick. Now Bungie has to fight perception, not code. And perception is harder. You can patch servers. You can't patch a rumor that became a worldview. Now add the next controversy, because this launch week came with a full combo meal of arguments. The reboot has a T for teen rating, and there's community backlash, because the original Marathon trilogy is remembered, by many, as darker in tone. So Reddit threads fill up with debates about cyber gore versus red blood, like the pigment is the soul of the game. It's exhausting, but it's revealing. The rating fight is a proxy war. What are people really arguing about? Trust, identity. Fear that the game has been sanded down to chase the widest possible audience. And here's the trap, chasing everyone can mean you belong to no one. In a crowded genre, inoffensive is not a brand. It's a disappearing act. You need a hook, a real one, not just Bungie gunplay. Gun feel is important, but it's not a monopoly anymore. The hook has to be the whole loop: tension, progression, risk, reward, the reasons you come back, the stories you tell after the session. Now zoom out, because the corporate pressure is the real villain lurking behind every argument. Sony didn't just partner with Bungie. Sony bought Bungie. For billions. And Sony isn't your chill friend who says take your time. Sony is a spreadsheet that wakes up angry. Sony is quarterly expectations turned into a company. Sony's CFO Lin Tao acknowledged that Destiny 2 underperformed expectations, and Sony recorded an impairment loss tied to Bungie assets. Sony also revised Bungie's business projections downward, months before Marathon's launch. That's not background noise. That's context. That's the reason Marathon can't simply be fine. A middle-tier outcome might keep a game alive, but it might not satisfy the people who signed the giant check. And the contrast makes it even nastier. Sony's live service push had a genuine star, with Helldivers 2 being the breakout cultural moment. While that's happening, Marathon is fighting to prove Bungie's worth to its parent company. That's brutal optics. One game looks like momentum. The other looks like a question. Now let's talk extraction war, because the market is cruel and the audience is fickle. Marathon is being compared directly to Arc Raiders, whether Bungie likes it or not. Marathon brings the Bungie DNA, snappy gunplay, slick feel. Arc Raiders brings scale and huge peaks. And scale matters because scale creates momentum, and momentum creates social gravity. When the crowd is big, players feel safer investing time. They know there will be content, updates, conversation, community, and matches. When the crowd is smaller, people start waiting to see if it grows. That waiting kills growth. And then Marathon adds another hurdle, the $40 price tag. $40 isn't insane, but it's friction in a world trained on try it free. When entry is free, players tolerate more early chaos. When entry costs money, chaos feels personal. If your first impression is a queue, a black screen, a disconnect, and a W8 error, that $40 starts to feel like you paid admission to stand in line. Then comes the YouTube machine. Predictably, creators track SteamDB live and use the 86K peak to fuel flop narratives. Lots of people compared it in real time to other Sony live service stories like Concord and Helldivers, because numbers are content and certainty gets clicks. Some criticism is fair. Launch stability is fair game. Player retention risk is fair game. But the dead-on-arrival speed run is also the content economy doing what it always does, rushing to write the obituary, before the patient stops breathing. Now here's the part that actually decides the future, and it's not a peak chart. It's retention. It's what happens when the novelty is gone and only the loop remains. This is where Bungie's roadmap gamble comes in. Season 1 content is part of the pitch, with things like Cryo Archive and new runner shells mentioned as roadmap beats. And the big structural choice is the wipe cycle. Bungie plans to wipe gear and progress every season on a roughly 3-month reset cycle. That is either a smart extraction mechanic or a retention landmine, depending on who you are. For hardcore extraction players, wipes can be healthy. They reset the economy. They keep tension alive. They stop early grinders from becoming untouchable gods forever. Wipes can make each season feel like a fresh race. For casual players, wipes can feel like being told your time is temporary. Grind now, reset later. And if launch already made people feel like they wasted time due to disconnects, wipes can amplify that why bother feeling. That's the danger. Not the mechanic itself. The timing and the trust. And trust is the theme of this entire week. Trust in servers. Trust in the build. Trust in whether Bungie is still Bungie. Because Marathon isn't just a new game. It's Bungie's first non-Destiny game since 2014. That's a long time. That's a studio stepping out of its comfort zone and trying to prove it still has the magic outside the Destiny machine. And it's doing that after years of turbulence, layoffs and delays being part of the backdrop people associate with new Bungie. So, the community is primed to interpret every problem as a sign of deeper issues. When everything is under scrutiny, launch stability stops being a technical detail and becomes symbolic. A queue becomes a story. An error code becomes a verdict. So where does that leave Marathon right now? In a weird limbo. The Steam peak proves interest exists, Around 86K concurrent is a real audience. That's the positive. The negatives are loud. The launch issues were severe enough to dominate conversation. Marathon broke became a meme and trended for hours. The server slam didn't prevent the blow-up, and the separate launch download fueled suspicion. The ESRB last-gen listing rumor poured gasoline on held-back fears. The teen rating debate fed the too-safe narrative. Arc Raiders looming in the same genre makes Marathon look smaller on momentum. The $40 entry increases friction. Sony's corporate pressure turns middle tier into a potential problem instead of a comfy win. And here's the harsh truth. In extraction shooters, the first couple of weeks can decide the whole arc. Not because the game can't recover, but because the audience can form habits elsewhere. When players settle into a routine, they don't come back easily. If Bungie stabilizes quickly, communicates clearly, and Season 1 lands with a compelling loop, Marathon can keep that 86K audience and build. If stability drags and the perception stays always offline, the audience bleeds before Season 2 even gets a chance to matter. That's the knife edge. It's not about whether Marathon is good. It's about whether Marathon is reliable, long enough for good to matter. So tell me this, did you actually get in and play? Or did you spend launch day becoming a W8 scholar? Because right now, the most dangerous enemy in Marathon isn't another runner. It's the login screen.